This is episode number 518 of the Health Fitness Podcast by InnerFight, brought to you in association with Smith Street Paleo. Please do hop over to smithstreetpaleo.com or drop them an email, hello@smithstreetpaleo.com, to find out different ways that they can serve you. Welcome back to another edition of the show, folks, and this one I am super excited about. Peter Stringer, maybe a household name for some of you. For me growing up, he's a very famous ex-Irish rugby player. Incredibly, played 98 times for his country and over 250 times for his province, Munster. I managed to catch up with him as he was on holiday out here in Dubai, and he generously gave me an hour of his time to record this show. Loved every single bit of it. He has an incredible amount of energy. He's just retired from the game of rugby, and you can see how pumped up he is about what's to come next. Something that's phenomenal about this guy, and that's where it links nicely in with health, is that he's never had a surgery in all of his rugby career, over 20 years, no surgery. And when I saw him on Monday morning, he'd already been in the gym. He was there at 5 a.m. He was also there at 11 p.m. the night before. Trained super hard. That was on his family holiday, and also took the time out to speak to me. Great show. Super nice guy. I hope you folks enjoy it. Welcome back to another edition of the Health Fitness Podcast. And today I am joined by... For those of you that actually follow rugby, you definitely know this guy, Peter Stringer. Peter, welcome to Dubai, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers. Good to be here.
Mate, awesome to have you on the show. And I think this is going to be a super interesting time as well, because you've recently finished playing rugby, an incredible career that we're going to dive into. You've recently, as we were discussing there, just been doing Dancing with the Stars, and I can't wait to hear all about that, mate. But give us a little bit of background on yourself, mate. Sort of, what is sport, how did it start, and a little bit about your career as a professional rugby player.
Sure, yeah. Look, I started when I was 6 years of age, young kid at home in Ireland, in Cork. My dad had played to a very minor level, and he got me interested in a little bit of rugby, brought me up to the local club, got going, and he was throwing a rugby ball around to me in the garden non-stop every single day, and I was running around in circles, and he stood in the middle, and I was passing off both hands and was wondering why I was being, absolutely flogged, and he was standing in the middle, and he wasn't tired at all. So it was all those days of hard training. I think it stemmed from those early days of playing rugby, but do you know what? I loved it. I loved that challenge, I suppose, of being that small guy as well when I first started. Yeah. Tackling those kind of bigger guys, and I just had it in me from day one. So absolutely loved it. I went on from there. Played through school and university, and actually had a funny time when professional rugby only kind of came about really in '95 after that World Cup in South Africa. I'd left school in '96, and it wasn't really an option to be a pro rugby player, and the game was completely changing. So went to university, studied chemistry, and had absolutely no interest in it, and was just really buying my time and to see what else would come up. And thankfully in Munster they started, I suppose, the professional game came about in very, very quickly in terms of the European Cup. The Heineken Cup had started. Ireland needed to put in some teams, and rather than the clubs going into it, they put the provinces in there. Right. So I was part of an academy system in Munster, and we were thrown into Heineken Cup straight out of school, 97, 98, wow. And I made my debut for Munster in '98, and that's where it really started.
Mate, you've kind of gone very, very quickly over things, and I want people to realise right now, as we were talking about before we started as well, you're capped 98 times for your country. You're capped over 200 times for your province. Which is just phenomenal for people that don't really understand. It is phenomenal. When did it? You said it started a little bit in the park there with your dad, but when did you sort of realise that rugby was going to be, I guess, your life, mate?
Yeah, it's hard to know. You try many things as a kid, and you'd always encourage kids to play a number of sports. And in Ireland, you're lucky enough, you've got hurling, you've got Gaelic football, you've got soccer, and it's a sport crazy country. It's just at times we don't get to enjoy the full value because of the weather outside, and you don't get to enjoy it. So, but for me, as a kid, you try everything, and you get a feel for what you want to do. And rugby for me was it. It was again that challenge that people saying on the sidelines, giving my parents a lot of grief for putting me out on the field with a lot of bigger guys, and more so than I got grief. That my parents it got to the stage where I was 11 years of age, and my parents considered sending me for growth hormone treatment. That I was so small at the stage where a lot of guys were developing and guys were getting bigger, and naturally as a parent you want to look after your kids and you don't want to put them in any sort of danger. So my mum had a cousin of hers whose son went and had this treatment done, and this guy shot up over a couple of months. So I remember my mum coming to me.
This is in like the late 80s, basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Old days, really.
This is way back. So my mum came to me, and like out of concern and for my own safety, and she said, "Look, we think you should have this treatment done." And I was just thinking, and do you know what? I was actually really happy with who I was and the way I was competing, and I was always being selected, so under 8s, under 9s or 10s. It wasn't as though I was being left out of teams. I was still being picked by coaches based on what I was doing on the field. So, and my mum said, "Look, we think this would be a very, very good idea." And obviously, I was tiny, man. Honestly, I was so small. So I remember going up to my bedroom and crying solidly for about 2 days because I didn't want to get this done. And like I said, I was just so happy with who I was. And when my parents saw that, I was content and I didn't want to change, then they said, "Look, well, if you're happy, then we're happy for you not to do this." So, and you know what? Things could have been so different if I had it done. I could have turned out to be a 6'2", not a scrum half. Certainly, it might never have made it in the game. And I think it was because of being so small that really made me, I suppose, work on my skill set, and I had to probably work a lot harder than other guys to make it in such a physical sport.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, mate, isn't it? Because obviously, having played rugby myself as well, it's quite funny, and everyone knows that scrum halves, half-backs are the smaller guys, and your job is to, and I think this is what makes it so difficult, because your job is to sort of boss 8 guys in front of you who are all around about or over 100 kilos around, and also you're almost the first line for those guys to run into. So it's a small man's position, but it needs some heart, doesn't it?
It does. Do you know what? And I think in an era of, I suppose, rugby, when I was making that transition out of school and it was the amateur game and into professional game, and Limerick rugby in particular, it's a tough game. And Limerick people, rugby is their passion. And when you see a lot of these guys who've come from Limerick clubs, and a lot of the forwards who I would have had to control and boss around the pitch, were these, tough guys from Limerick: Peter Closey, Mick Galway, Anthony Foley, Alan Quinlan. These guys who would have played rugby in the depths of Limerick and would not have taken a backward step for anybody. So here's me, young kid coming out of school, young Cork guy who's was always slagged for being kind of well spoken in and around the kind of the Munster circles.
So are you a posh kid? Are you?
I probably would have been a posh kid. Certainly coming into a Munster setup where you had these Limerick forwards who would would certainly have given me a bit of a hard time. So I had to learn my trade in terms of, as a scrum half, as a 9, you need to be that kind of dominant figure. You need to have that voice. But for me, I suppose, coming out of school, you're a little bit shy, and I'm quite an introverted person anyway. But when you get on the field, something comes over you, and you have to kind of bring that out of you. You got to control these guys, because that's the only way to get their respect. And I found that over the years, that if you're just this timid guy and not bossing them around the place, they won't respect you. And I think the only way to do it was to go all out and literally be that kind of dominant person and have that bark and have that bite. And that's what I've learned over the years.
Do you think that you were probably a little bit different on the field to off the field because you had to be? Did that create almost maybe 2 personalities, maybe?
Oh, 100%. I'm a non-drinker. I shy away from kind of group conversations and being at the back of a group. Away from rugby, I'm the person I'll be an observer. I'll be a listener. I'll take things in, and not the person who's kind of the center of attention anytime there's a group activity or anything like that. But when it comes to rugby, it seems it's my space. I'm comfortable there. I'm I'm confident, and that has come with just, you know, being involved with such big characters over the years that, you know, it's a case of you either sink or swim in that environment. And as a 9, like I've said, it's something that it's a challenge, but you know, you have to do it. And I've developed my character as a result of that over the years. And you know, rugby isn't a place for kind of the shy or the weak. It's a place where you got to be vocal, you got to be dominant, particularly in the position I was playing. You know, being a dictator and being in control of a lot of what goes on the field. And it's no harm to be able to boss those forwards around the place, and you know, they need a little bit of direction. They're not the smartest guys in the shed, are they?
Hey, we're steady. I haven't told you where I used to play yet, mate. So you lob up at Munster, and you start your career bossing these, as you said, maybe more rural fellas around. At that stage, mate, did you feel like you'd go on and play for Ireland? Was that the goal? You seem like a real perfectionist. Was it from the start that you were going to play for Ireland, or were you just a day at a time?
You always have that dream, and you see, I've been to internationals with my dad when I was 10 or 11, sitting in the stands, and you have that dream and the ambition to play for your country, and you get into a professional setup like Munster, and you're training and playing with guys who were playing for Ireland at the time, and you're just in awe of seeing them in the green jersey, and it just had become a lifelong dream. But yeah, like, it is a process. It's a tough process. It's you know, every day is a grind. It's not easy when you go from playing in schools rugby to a full-time professional setup. As soon as you leave, you're in twice a day. You're training, and you know, there's 4 provinces, and you know, if you're playing for one of those, then you can see the light at the end in terms of that green jersey, because it's not as though there's 12 or 13 teams that you're kind of competing for other guys around the country. You're going to be at the forefront. If you're a starting guy in that team, then you're going to be in the mix for the national setup.
1 in 4 chances, right?
1 in 4, absolutely. And I was very, very fortunate at the time I broke into the Munster setup. There were 2 guys in my position who were ahead of me, who were in the Irish squad. So both scrum halves that were ahead of me at Munster were in the Irish squad. They went away to Ireland, to the World Cup with Ireland in '99. So it gave me an opportunity when they were gone to play for Munster. So when they came back from the World Cup with Ireland, I held my place at Munster. So that was a huge thing for me. That was my opportunity to really step in. And I remember my coach at the time, Declan Kidney, said to me when I was coming on for my first cap, when these guys were away, he said, go out there and give me a reason not to drop you. So I went out, and from that day, I was playing for Munster for 15 years as being a starting scrum half.
Mate, tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's very powerful. Like, give me a reason not to drop you. How did that make you feel? Like, that must just be like...
It was weird. I was standing on the sideline, like, obviously nervous as hell. Coming on in the second half, we were playing Ulster in Cork, and he just tapped me on the shoulder and he said this, and at that moment, I was just worried about my own skill set, my passing, my tackling, my kicking. I said, just make sure I just get these done properly, and because you don't want to go out there and, you know, it to be your first and last cap for Munster. So he tapped me on the shoulder, and it reset things a small bit. It just kind of made me think, okay, I have an opportunity here. He has belief in me, he has confidence in me, putting me out there, and it kind of proved to me that, you know, he wanted to see me succeed, and that kind of gave me probably that little bit of confidence to think to myself, do you know what I've done all along, and how I've prepared for this moment, I don't need to actually do anything different. You know, I've got to this point for a reason, and it's based on me, you know, training hard, performing, and he knows what I can do. So I didn't really have to think about it too much or force anything. So it was just a nice little moment standing on the sideline, and a nice little message before I went on the field.
I think you've just picked up on something that I'm super interested in as well, mate, is that sometimes when we get given that opportunity, we start to think that we have to do things different. But what you've just said is so cool, in that you just had to do what you've already done or what you've always done and what comes natural, and just deliver it on that stage. You don't need to change anything.
You
right?
don't need to, and it's such a big moment, and there's a lot of external stuff and external factors when you're in a big environment like that, and the pressures that come with that. You know, your first cap in front of a big crowd for the first time. You know, you don't need to do anything different. And like I said, you've put in hard work over the years, and you know, you've trained for that moment.
Yeah.
And you know, why would you go off and try and do something else? I always kind of look back on it, and later in my career, when I found myself sitting on the bench and I wasn't a regular starter, you kind of find yourself, you might get 20 minutes at the end of a game.
Yeah.
And you always feel in the back of your head, okay, I need to get on the field here and show these coaches absolutely everything I can do. And that's always the kind of the tricky thing, because you're never going to do that in 20 minutes. You're not going to, you know, try and run the length of the field and score a try and make big tackles and, you know, get all those elements into the 20 minutes. And guys are, you know, so concerned with that sometimes it just goes haywire completely, and you end up messing things up, and you know, you're down the pecking order as a result. So again, it's about doing those basics, doing the things, the simple things really, really well on a consistent basis, and over time, then you know, your value to the coaches will be seen, and you will kind of come through. It's just not about forcing things, because we know when we force things, things don't necessarily always go the way you want.
I think it's an amazing takeaway for life, mate. I think it's just it applies in so many different areas. So these guys get back from the World Cup. What happens next?
What happens? I suppose guys come back and they think, okay, we're just going to slot back into things. And do you know what? I just kind of kept kind of plugging away, and in many ways, I nearly expected that to happen as well.
Right.
Because I suppose as a young kid coming in, and you're probably, you know, naive to the whole situation, and you know, you're playing well, things are going very well for you, but you see these two guys come back in, you know, you're expecting them to slot straight back in. But you know, I remember there was a Heineken Cup game, and I was selected ahead of them, and it was actually a really big shock when they were there. So it was a case where, okay, you know, there's real value in what I've done and what I've brought to the setup, and a huge part of it was what we were talking about a while ago in bossing those forwards and having that respect of those bigger guys in front of you. So I think that was a huge thing, that I knew that, you know, had I been that kind of quiet guy, I don't think I would have kind of sustained that kind of position on the field and have been in control when those guys came back. So for me, that was the realization that this was real. I think, you know, it was all well and good. I was playing with a little bit of freedom and was quite relaxed when these guys were away. But when they came back, you know, that felt real, because
level up a bit.
So when I was starting, I felt then initially, okay, there's pressure here, and you feel that kind of pressure because these two guys are going to be snapping at your heels. They want their position back. They're not happy. So that was the first time I had to kind of really deal with kind of that competitive nature within a squad. I felt like that, you know, when they were away, it was just, you know, this was so casual, it was relaxed, I was playing, there was no real pressure. But then it was to try and bring that and continue playing the way I was when they came back, so that I kind of keep my place. So it was a big challenge, and but do you know what? You relish it and you loved it, and all through my career, you have this this thing where, you know, people, you know, they want that jersey, they want that position, and that it brings the best out of you. And I think with competition, whatever it is in life, you know that if there's something else and somebody else wants what you have, it's just this inner fight. Looking at your top, it comes out in you, and you just make the most of it. And you said, you know what, this is not going to happen. I'm holding on to this jersey for as long as I can. And
you did, mate. You held on to it for quite a while. I mean, over 200 games. Let's jump out a little bit from Munster. When you were first selected to play for Ireland, that must have been absolutely incredible, mate. Talk us through.
Yeah, it was incredible. It was 2000. I remember I'd been involved in a training squad that before the Six Nations started, and it was a time when Irish rugby, you know, if you finished third in the championship, it might have been seen as a success. And times weren't overly great. And I remember my first selection for Ireland was on the bench against England, and sitting in the stands in Twickenham in the first game of Six Nations, and remember England put 50 points on us, and I remember sitting in the stand thinking to myself, do you know what, like, I really want to be on that pitch, but in many ways I don't want to come on and it be my last, because as it turned out, there were so many guys had played their last game in an Irish shirt that day.
Really?
So the following week there was a raft of changes. So 5 of us made our debuts the following week against Scotland at home in Lansdowne Road. Wow. So
I mean, does it get any bigger?
It doesn't get any bigger, and to do it at home was pretty nice. And we went out, and the first half is a complete blur. I've rewatched that game in recent years and have actually no recollection of being there at that moment in time.
Really?
Yes, lining up for the anthems and the pre-game stuff, but the game just flew by, and that's the way anyone who describes their first cap, that's what happens.
Yeah.
And we beat Scotland. We won 44-22, the first time we've beaten Scotland in 13 years, and went to Paris the following week, and we beat France, the first time in 28 years that Ireland had beaten France. And it's just it was just things of dreams. It really was.
Yeah.
And it was kind of the beginning of a transitional period in Irish rugby, as well as the provinces doing really well in Europe, and really pushing on in terms of professional rugby. So to be part of that era was phenomenal, and it was really looking back on games now, you see how old school it was, and how kind of the forwards did their job and the backs did their job, and there was so much room and space for the backs that all the forwards would pile into rucks. There was no kind of real strategy in terms of how you played the game, but it was it was just an unbelievable time to be part of a winning, and everyone wants to win. That's why you do it.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
That's what it comes down to.
And that's where I actually wanted to jump to that next. What's your, of those 98 games, what's your most memorable one? I guess that your debut is always going to be huge, and although you can't remember it, but what's your most memorable victory, mate, and why?
There've been a few, thankfully. That game in Paris, like I just described, was pretty special, because I've been watching an Irish team on TV for years as a kid, going to France, and if you kept France under 50 points, you're doing well, doing very well. So, to go there and just no one give us a chance to even get that close to them, let alone win the game. But in the early days, that was probably one. I remember we played England in Twickenham after they came back from winning the World Cup, and we won a Triple Crown in Twickenham, which was pretty special. And another one then, obviously, the Grand Slam in 2009 in Cardiff. We had been close. We've been thereabouts on a few occasions. Championship kind of runners-up, but never really, I suppose, were in a realistic chance. England beat us by, again, 50 points in a Grand Slam decider, which was tough. But Grand Slam 2009 in Cardiff, there's no better place to play rugby, in my eyes. A roof closed in Cardiff is just something special, and thankfully we've had success with Munster and Ireland there over the years, it's, for me, there's no place like it. And
what makes it special, mate?
Oh man, the noise, the how close the crowd are to the pitch. For me, standing here now and as far away from you as I am, if we were just having this conversation, we would not be able to hear each other.
Really?
I literally have to shout in your ear for us to hear each other speak. So that made things challenging. But you know what? Hairs in the back of the neck stuff is just there's nowhere like it in terms of atmosphere, singing the anthems, and that's as good as it gets.
How does anyone hear you? You're a little half-back and you're bossing these forwards.
They know. There's a look. There's a look. There's a look in the eye. They know that we've repped things in training. So whether forwards are, whether they fall in a tackle, and if they don't present the ball properly, they'll know if it's not in the right position for me, because I know I'm going to get it from the out half outside me. If it's not delivered quickly on a play to him when he wants it, I'm going to get it from him. And that's a mark of, I suppose, what we went through as a team, Munster and Ireland, that we had real respect for each other. We gave it to each other on the field and on the training pitch, that demanded really, really high standards from each other. So I think when it came to big games, that we were able to deliver, that there was no kind of nicey-nicey. It was just, and it wasn't meant in a kind of a malicious way whatsoever. But we realised that, to get the best out of each other, and we had a really, really good core group of players that really dug deep kind of in pre-season training, and there were guys who didn't cut corners, and that was a kind of a mark of what we were as a really successful team. So when it came to kind of big days like that, you knew there was no kind of chatting and seeing where guys were. Instinctively, you knew that the forwards, they didn't place it properly for me. That I nearly felt like I'd stand on their fingers to make sure that they did it properly the next time. So it was just... I
can imagine you're a little bit fired.
You got away with so much back in the day, but now with TMOs and everything, you can't even stand on your own fella's hands again. But it was just... we had this kind of understanding with each other that, we made sure whether it be the guys delivering ball off the line out to me, they knew that it had to be in the right place, because it had a knock-on effect that how we would ship the ball on to the next person. So it was it was, you didn't have to speak too much. There was a look in the eye that if guys weren't happy, they'd let you know.
Mate, I want to dig into, obviously we spoke a little bit before the show about fitness and how fit you are now, and I want to get to that, but what was fitness like? I mean, you're 41, you're 1 year older than me, mate, so you're an old man. But I remember when I was playing, mate, and we knew a little bit about nutrition, we knew a little bit about how we should train for strength and how we should train to get faster on the field. Give us a little bit your experience. You played at the top level for a number of years. How was fitness handled for you?
Yeah, it was like I said, when I came into the game, everyone was learning. Right. Not only the players, the coaches were learning, the conditioners, the fitness staff, everyone was learning about what was happening with professional rugby, because in the amateur days, you had no fitness training. No. It was just guys would meet up on a Tuesday for training, and it would just be, really kind of rugby based. On a Thursday, play a game on a Saturday, and that's the way it was. Yeah. So when professional rugby came about, it was a case, okay, we've got to put some sort of a structure on this. It was, okay, we're full-time, we've got to fill our time with sessions, and that was the case. It was like, we go into the gym and we'll lift some weights, and we've a Tuesday now, we can do a little bit of running, we don't need to kind of save ourselves, we can, we have the time, guys don't need to get the jobs, we can do a little bit of training. So it was a case where I had always had that feeling inside me that I just wanted to be fit. I remember just being on my summer holidays, going for swims, going for long distance runs, 10 or 11 years of age, and it was in me. And I think when it came to a professional setup, it was easy. Yeah. Not that it was easy to train. The training was hard. It was really tough, but you get a weird buzz from it. When it's done, you get that feeling, especially when you do it with teammates. You do kind of these horrible fitness sessions with these Aussie conditioners who came over. This guy Damien Mednes, who's now, I think he was with Australian cricket for a while, and he brought just some insane sessions for us to do in pre-season, who guys were just collapsing on the side of the pitch with exhaustion, and just, but when you have it done and you have that feeling that you've nearly been in the trenches with your teammates, it's kind of, that's where you kind of build up those kind of moments with guys, in those pre-season moments when people don't see it, and those kind of those horrible mornings when you're out running kind of 1K runs, and you do a 900, an 800, a 700 meter run, 600, and you do it back to back, you do it again, and your legs are hanging. So it was those early days. It was all about kind of, okay, there wasn't much strategy and there wasn't much kind of thought process in it. It was just run. And obviously now the way it's gone is, the science behind it in terms of, okay, the ball is in play for maybe maximum of 3 minutes on average in a game. Yeah. So you might have your conditioning blocks, based on that for rugby. So you'd have contact sessions for 3 minutes, fitness drills for 3 minutes. And it would all be done at different heart rates. So depending on your position. So for me, the conditioners would know my heart rate and my kind of max level.
Yes.
So I would be training maybe at 10% above my max to get the best out of me, in terms of then that the props might be doing different types of sessions. They might be doing scrummaging fitness, or they might be doing kind of line out stuff where they're lifting guys and they're lifting things. So that would all be done kind of position specific. Yeah. So that's the way the science has gone in the last couple of years. And
did you notice a massive, because obviously you played the game for such a number of years, when it changed, when that approach to conditioning changed, did you notice a big difference in the performance on the field and the way that the game was played?
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, on my summer holidays before, I used to always go off and do these slow, long-distance runs like everybody else, just go for a run and thinking that's you get fit, and you come back in day one of pre-season and you're absolutely blowing when you kind of have to do kind of sprints. So it's picking and choosing the different types of sessions. But certainly I noticed over the years that as things changed, that you were able to cope with scenarios on the pitch. And for me, definitely, rather than just doing kind of all long distance runs, where some of my stuff would be short little sprints and kind of a rest, that you could kind of work on, I suppose, your speed endurance then, where you might be running for kind of higher distances. But it was all done with the purpose of how you perform in the game, and 100% that you'd see change. And it was all about, it wasn't gone off, okay, let's go lads, we're going for a 5-minute run, at a steady 3/4 pace, which probably didn't do guys kind of any favours. You want to perform as though you want to do on the field, and certainly you see scores change in terms of your speed and how you perform during a game. You get feedback from all the GPS data that you're wearing. You get your top meters, you get how far you've run in that kind of high heart rate zone. So when you see changes and when you see the scores changing and you see the benefits, then obviously they must be doing something right in terms of their approach.
I think it's super interesting, because obviously following rugby and having played as well, like seeing what you said there, like we're now taking, okay, you're going to be active for 2 or 3 minutes, and I think a lot of that started in rugby sevens. I think rugby sevens, they sort of started with the GPS trackers, didn't they, and the ball's in play for this many minutes and stuff, which makes we see a lot more of a fluid game, I think, and like you said before, like forwards just do forward stuff and it gives loads of space for the backs, but it's changed. But we see incredibly high scoring games, but we still see a lot of games that are very tight in the score margin, maybe a draw that's really not over 20-25 points scored. So how do you think like it's developing, but we're still getting these really tight games, either at a low score margin, or we now get draws, or some, a team will win by 45 points to 42, which I think 15 years ago just would never happen, would it?
It wouldn't have happened, and a lot of it has come down to fitness levels. And I think you're looking at conditions as well. You're looking at a dry ball, and you see like in Super Rugby, for argument's sake, you see really, really high scoring games. And I think teams back their attack, and a lot of the times, if they feel, okay, we might leak 3 or 4 tries, but we know we've got the ability to score 6 or 7 tries. That probably, in speaking to a lot of guys and coaches and players, that the emphasis on a lot of those games is throw the ball around and be really, really structured in your attack, and they're not so much focusing on the defence, because it's a free-flowing game that they want, and a lot of these Islanders, and it's incredible to watch. And they have, and when you're playing in decent weather, you can do it, and they probably have the license to do that. But, there probably is an element that defences at times aren't as good as they could be. That we saw probably an influx of rugby league coaches coming into rugby union a few years ago in terms of really putting some structure on defence. Like I said, when I started first, there was no structure. There was no I suppose ownership of where you are on the field and what you need to do, other than just make your tackle. But there was no defensive system that, if you look back on a video, that you can see, okay, you can identify where someone messed up and say, okay, you should have been in that position. Whereas before, it was just everyone a free for all, and if you missed a tackle, that was probably the only, I suppose, tangible thing that you could see as a negative. But nowadays, when everything is so well defined in terms of nominating in and around the ruck, whether you're 1, 2, 3, or whether you're a pillar or whatever they call them, your role in that position, so that when you don't do it, it's easily identifiable. So that was huge. Like an influx of these coaches coming in, and it totally had to, I suppose, put the attacking coaches' minds, had to work really, really hard at coming up with new plays to break down these defensive systems. And the game is ever evolving, and that's, guys are getting smarter and smarter. You've got backroom teams who are identifying, where teams are going to attack and how teams defend. So you've got to be really smart with coming up with these new attacking plays to get tries. But you see teams who have a license from coaches to throw the ball around, and they're the teams who are really successful with scoring tries, but they're probably teams who spend a lot more time with an attacking mindset in training and developing their attacking game, rather than defensively kind of putting in the time. So, like I said, if they can back themselves to score more tries than the opposition, they're going to win more games than not.
Yeah, it's very interesting the way it's gone, and who knows where we'll be in sort of 10 years, mate. One thing we said before we started is that, again, I'll emphasise that you are now 41 and I'm only 40. I'm not hung up on this at all, mate. But one of the things that you said is that you're probably fitter now. You've finished the game in great shape. Physically, you look fantastic. People only just need to go over and see your Instagram account, mate. You're in fantastic shape, you're probably an anomaly of rugby players. Like a lot of rugby players might finish a little bit earlier, 35, 34, 36 years old. You finished just over 40. You're in fantastic shape, mate. How have you managed to do it? Talk to us about your fitness regime. Talk to us about how you eat. Let's hear about that side of life.
Yeah, it's something I'm fascinated by. I left Munster in 2012 on loan to go to the UK because I wasn't getting game time and I wanted to play. I still felt really good, and I'd always looked after myself in terms of my training, and I had always felt the more I did, the better I felt.
Right.
And I wanted to make sure that whatever number of years I'd left in the game, that when I went to the UK to try and pick up a new contract, that just said, do you know what, I don't want to have any regrets here. So, and I really put it down to becoming the 24-hour athlete, and that's,
I like that.
That's ultimately what has made me, and it defines me as a person. Nowadays you see a lot of guys who you rock up to a training camp or day to day with a club, and you've got everything laid out for you in terms of what you wear, what you eat, where you need to be. And for me, it was always about when you finish whatever at 2 o'clock, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, that my day would nearly start then. It's easy when you're in a professional environment to be led, to told what to do, but it's how you mind yourself, how you look after yourself in those other hours is the most important thing for me. And I think that's a massive thing for guys who are coming into the game, coming out of academies now, not to go home, sitting on a couch, playing your PlayStation, eating crap food. It's about learning what to do for yourself and how to look after yourself, because it's all well and good when you're in the club, but you got to bring it home. You got to make sure that you're recovered, you're prepared for the 9 o'clock start the next morning. Right. And that's what I took from it. In the last 6 years of my career, I said, you know what, I'm someone who will live with regrets if I don't do everything in my power to play at the highest level for as long as I can. Wow. So I trained more often, I recovered, I just did everything I could in terms of my food. I made sure I was eating the right things to get the right amount of energy from my food so that I was able to train harder, and it just became an obsession. And since I finished playing, it's an even more of an obsession because I'm on my own schedule. I get to train as I want. I'm up early. I've got a 2-year-old at home who's demanding of a lot of time, so I get up. I'm up at 5 to do my training. In the gym a lot. Obviously, I like running as well. Not as much as you enjoy running.
Say, might just get an invite in a second. Keep talking.
Yeah, for me, it's just about mixing up my sessions and doing the sessions that I love to do. And it's like I said, it's become an obsession, not just from a professional rugby point of view, it's now become my life, and I want to be able to do this when I'm 90 years of age. So
that's one thing that really stands out to me from the short time we spent together, Peter, is that you feel the benefit of your hard work. And I think it's difficult sometimes, isn't it, when we're talking about motivating people, like you're going to say, yeah, you're going to get up at 5 a.m, you're going to do this, you're going to do that, but you really feel it. I can feel that you feel it, mate, and I can feel that you felt it through your career. And now that I love two things that you said there. You want to be the 24-hour athlete, and also now you manage your own time. You sort of you can control everything, which you seem to love.
Yeah, and you know what? A lot of guys who finish playing, they struggle with that transition coming out of professional sport. You've got that structure, you've got the schedules that you're given on a daily basis. You, like I said, you're told where to be. You get your itinerary for the following week, and it's hard for a lot of guys. But I was always someone that I had my own routine, and outside of rugby. So whether it be on my 4 weeks off in the summer, the break, I still had my schedule. I still trained twice a day. I kept that up, and I was able to put structure on my life, and I enjoyed it. A lot of guys don't want to see a gym, or they don't want to run. You know, whenever they've had enough, they're done with it. But for me, I'm just so passionate about it. And like you said there, when you see results and you see change and you see the benefits of what can happen as a result of what you do. So over my career, when I could see I had to work hard in the gym to develop strength. I was never going to be the tallest and strongest guy, but I had to do everything I possibly could to be as strong as I could be. So when you reach that level and you feel proud of what you've done, you feel passionate. Of course, you want to keep going. And I know when people are starting out and they want to get into fitness, and it is a struggle for people, who haven't done it before, and people have dips and I just don't have that motivation. But I think when you see change and when you see results come about, that's the inspiration, that's the motivation that people get from it. It's not just, I totally get it that not everyone kind of wants to get up early and, you feel tired.
I think everyone should want
But it's when you see whatever little change it is, whatever little mindset change that you get from whatever little bit of exercise you do, whether it's, do you know what, I feel a little bit better this morning, and that's as a result of you making a change in your life, or, I've lost a small bit of weight, or I feel a little bit better, I don't feel as out of breath walking up the stairs that I would normally have done. So it's all those little things. When you start to notice those things, then it becomes addictive, and then that's when people kind of should push on and really kind of push themselves up the intensity, up the frequency, and just do it, man.
I love how much you love it, mate.
I do love it. I'm a bit obsessed.
It's cool. Mate, your whole life has been about the next game, the next goal, pre-season, off-season. In the off-season, you're out doing stuff. All that's now been removed. You don't have the next game to look forward to. So how are you motivating yourself? What goals have you set for yourself? As I said, folks, hop over to his Instagram account. He's in incredible shape. How are you keeping yourself motivated? Is there some big goals? Are you going to come and do an ultra with me? I don't know. Just chucking it out there. What's on the cards?
You never know. You never know. Do you know what I said when I finished playing? I said I'd take 6 months away. Like I said, we've got a 2-year-old at home, and which has just been the most amazing thing. And
awesome.
when you're away traveling a lot with rugby, and your weekends are gone, and you don't have that family time. And I literally wanted to get back from the UK back to Ireland. Had said I'd take 6 months off and just, like I said, get back into my schedule, my own schedule, train really hard, really early in the morning, and have some family time, and just take time away from that kind of daily grind of being part of a professional setup, which I absolutely love. But you know what? Being able to do what I do and set my own targets, set my own goals, and that's what this process is about now. And the transitional period that I'm in, of spending time with family, of getting out here on a little bit of a break to Dubai, and looking for kind of, I suppose, areas to excel again. And I suppose I know when I apply myself to something, and whenever I decide what I want to do, I know that's going to be 100%. So I'm I'm holding back a little bit because I just want to make sure that it's something that I'm passionate about, I'm motivated to do, because you meet people along the way who are business people and they throw plenty of opportunities at you.
I'm sure.
You know, you got to pick what's right, and I don't want to just be sitting at a desk 9 to 5 and doing something for the sake of picking up a wage, because that's not me. It's a case where I'm like, I suppose like most people, that unless I'm motivated to do it, because I've had a job for so many years that I actually love doing and I would have done it for nothing, it's going to be hard to replace. But I want to find that thing that just drives me, that makes me want to get up every single morning and be super passionate about it. So look,
any
that's
feelings on what that is yet, mate?
I don't know, and people always talk, and the natural progression for a lot of players is to go into coaching, and whether that's a thing maybe in the future. But again, that's something that if I know I start, that's going to be a big commitment. And we've just come back from the UK, and we're probably looking for a bit of stability at the moment. And you know, the coaching career probably is very much like a player. You could be at a place for a year, have to move, whether it's UK, Ireland, France, the States, wherever it may be. And I think just at the moment, it's probably nice just to be back home and, you know, meet a few people, meet family, and just try and. It's going to be in the fitness. It's going to be in that nutrition space.
It looks it.
and do you know what? Because it comes naturally. It's what I've learned over the last 20 years. It's what's got me to the position I'm in now, and in playing for so long, feeling really, really fit, you know, and you know, thankfully, you know, I've never had an operation, never really been out, and you know, and there was a challenging moment. It was 2 years ago. I did my cruciate 2 years ago in a game, and decided not to have an operation. And I suppose at 39 years of age, you know, you're looking for a new contract. You know, have an operation in your knee. You know, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So I just. I worked really hard. I rehabbed for 6 weeks. I was back playing after 6 weeks, and I just had this mindset that, you know what, this is it. I'm gonna kind of keep playing, and it's really good now.
Is
and
it all right?
It's honestly, it's I don't even think about it anymore, and it's. I'm delighted that I didn't have it done, because it could have cut 2 years off my career. I could have only finished at the early age of 39 as opposed to just past 40.
Just past 40. Mate, honestly, absolutely is an inspirational story. I can't think of that many international rugby players have spent so long really at the top of the game and come out in such good shape. Never had an operation. You're a freak, mate. It's honestly, and the way that you share your story, mate, for me is I've interviewed over 500 people, is massively motivating, and I'm sure for the listeners it is. Mate, I know you're on holiday and I don't want to take too much more of your time, but if you could, mate, and I ask this question to a lot of people, you've obviously learned a lot along the way and you've shared a lot of those lessons with us today, and it's phenomenal. But if you could sort of wrap everything up in one parting bit of advice for people, what is the Peter Stringer go-to piece of advice, mate?
Oh, it's a tough one. It's so broad, isn't it? It's,
isn't it?
Do you know what?
And on the spot as well.
For me, in what's got me to where I am, and I've been criticised a lot in my career, and you get into an Irish setup, and you know the first season's all well and good, and things are going well, and you know obviously then second season the media get on your back, and you should be doing this, you should be doing that. And for me, I took a step back, probably third or fourth season with Ireland, and I said, you know what, like we've spoken about, I've worked really, really hard to get to where I am, and a lot of that has come down to working super hard at my strengths. I perfected my strengths. I was never going to be the biggest. I was never going to be the strongest. I had a skill set. I had a pass. I had the ability to read a game. So for me, it was about perfecting those strengths. I knew that if I worked really hard at those and I was better than anybody else at those, then coaches would have no option not to pick me. So I knew that, look, of course you work on your weaknesses. That's absolutely what you do, and you try and improve those. For me, know your strengths and work unbelievably hard at them so that you are the best at them, and it'll stand to you in the long run.
Peter, absolute legend, mate. I really, really appreciate your time. As I said,
mate. Thanks,
you're on holiday. That's an amazing show. I can't wait already to listen back to it, to make all my notes on it. But, mate, we're going to follow you up. folks should hop over to your Instagram. You're obviously very lively on Instagram, Stringer9. People need to go and check out. If you don't believe what shape this guy's in, he's in phenomenal shape and make very inspirational content we're putting out. So
Cheers, man. Thanks, Marcus. Thanks
very much.
Cheers, pal.
Cheers.